From a lulling sentiment accompanied with a kiss goodnight, or an enthusiastic, inspiring speech, or the most incredible concert you've ever heard, the human voice can move mountains and touch many lives. But if we were to ask how people do it, even the most prolific Grammy award-winning artist, how they sing, how they achieve these notes and express themselves, most of them, if they were honest about it, really have no idea how they do it. The man to help break these myths is here with us today on Soul Priorities. I'm really happy to introduce a dear friend of mine and the voice builder to the world, Gary Katona. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Tuaca. Good to be here.
Good to see you. It's been a while. We're overdue for a visit.
Indeed.
And to talk about one of my passions, music and the power of the voice. Okay. And you're definitely the man to talk to about this.
Yeah, the human voice is a magical item. You know, think about it. You know, in your voice, what is a voice? What is sound? Really, your voice is basically sound waves. But within those sound waves, your individuality exists. How does it, you might say, how is that even possible? How can your mood, your personality, your values, your ideas be expressed in visible sound waves? Yet it happens. When you call me on the phone, I recognize it's you. I can tell that you're in a good mood or in a bad mood. You know what's happening in your life based upon the quality of your voice. How could those kind of spiritual characteristics be carried in sound waves? It's very interesting, and it's mysterious. It's sort of mysterious when you think about it.
Yeah, it's for me, it's one of the languages, one of the healing languages, and you may know this from my work. You know, music is a healer, sacred geometry, and math, and these are three languages that inform everybody in ways that we're just now beginning to touch upon. And in terms of your own story, I know your journey personally. Some people know you as the guy next door and deliver your mail to you, but you're the voice builder of the world. I'm going to share how you arrived at that. Some of it struggles with your own voice and your own aspirations. So let's go back a little bit to you being a Philadelphia boy.
Well, you know, I'm Italian American, which has meaning in terms of music. My parents were in love with opera, which opera is an Italian tradition. So I was exposed to operatic singing as a young boy, even though I enjoyed commercial music, the Beatles and everybody else. I still developed this passion for the operatic voice, and saw myself perhaps as having the passion to become a singer. So that's sort of what got me going, is being exposed to that kind of music and falling in love with the sound of the voice. I recall many times when I was very, very young, even before 10 years old, listening to singers and wondering what that is. I know that sounds a little opaque, but it really was like that. And what is that sound? And why does that sound good? And why does that one not sound good? That's without any understanding of what voice is. I just had that special, you might say, intuition or aptitude that appeared to be unnatural for somebody at that age.
Mm-hmm. And setting off to singing, were you just like alone in your room with records and Mario Lanza and you know, what was that for you in terms of, you know, there's another generalization about being an Italian American, and you know, I have some, you know, Philadelphia in my lineage as well, and at that time there was a machismo that was portrayed,
of course,
you know, in the neighborhood. So how did these cultures find a way to be lived in you without, you know, you getting your lights knocked out? You know.
It's interesting because I was, besides falling in love with voice and with singing, I was also an athlete. In fact, I was a champion wrestler. So I was a sort of a paradox. I was a champion wrestler who sang. So I couldn't be given too much lip because I could strike back. But it really was interesting because people who knew me found it interesting that how I was able to bring into one person something, the wrestler and the singer. And as you said correctly, in those days, back in Philly, I mean, if you're an Italian American, and you were sort of a macho kind of guy. Yeah. And singing was not singing. At least operatic singing was not something that a typical Italian American did at that time.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And I remember singing in the choir with my first solos in the high school choir, and all my fellow wrestlers were in the auditorium looking at me saying, "You got to be kidding me! Is that really Gary up there?" But that's the way it is.
Yeah. It's like that's the guy I see in the locker room.
That's
you
right.
know. When we talk about girls, what's this?
But see, it's interesting because I really had. Again, I think if you're destined to be something, you have what you might consider an irrational or non-rational fixation to it. Yeah. It's like when Einstein thought of the theory of relativity, it was basically the result of his focusing on the nature of light. I mean, while everybody else was running around eating frankfurters in Austria and Germany, Einstein was home wondering, what the hell is light? Why has it travel the way it travels, and how will time be affected by it? And so he fell in love, was obsessed with light, which gave birth to all his ideas. And in very much the same way, I had this really bizarre obsession with sound, with vocal sound. I just loved the sound of the human voice. I knew that somehow, some way, my life is going to will be defined by that passion.
And building your own voice. I mean, everyone has a natural voice, but it's not necessarily in its state of potential or full expression for potentially a variety of reasons. But in pursuit of developing your own, how do those come together for you?
Well, you must understand that unlike other kinds of musicians, the singer is not only the performer; he's also the instrument.
Yes.
Right. So when you sing, it's not as though someone gave you an instrument and said, "Now sing." You have to create the thing that you're singing with, and that instrument is made up of muscle, and primarily with musculature. So if you're a singer, your first job, what I discovered ultimately is that your first job is to build musculature foundation, so you have an instrument to sing with. The mistake that many people make is most of us are born with half-finished instruments, so to speak, and we love singing, but the instrument itself is not developed. So it's a major mistake if people begin singing without having an instrument that's ready to sing.
Yeah, and there was a time where, in this process of singing, you had some trouble with your own voice, and you went to other people to assist you with that. But what was the turnout?
Well, when I realized I was told by my choir director and others that I had a gifted voice. This is like a fantasy come true. I mean, I had this dream about becoming a singer, and now being told that I had a gift for it. What else do I need, right? So the next point was, what should I do next? Well, what's natural? What's natural is to take formal voice lessons. So I began studying voice formally with different teachers. And what's bizarre about that experience is that the more I studied, I began noticing my natural voice began deteriorating. So I found myself going from teacher to teacher to teacher to try to build on this natural gift that I was given. And over the course of 10 years and 14 different teachers, I failed miserably. In fact, the voice ended up, imagine studying something for 10 years and being worse off after you're done. That makes no sense. If you practiced anything, you would have to get better. With voice, it's not like that. And it was a bizarre experience for me. How could it be that I devoted myself to the art of singing, yet after 10 years I was less than I was when I first began? And what I realized, to my amazement, is the reason why that was the case is because I was being taught techniques that systematically undermined the instrument. Remember I told you the first principle of singing is having an instrument? Well, you have to make sure it's not destroyed along the way. In my case, my teachers destroyed my voice. Hard to believe, but if you talk to people who studied voice, you'll hear the story over and over and over again. And what it comes down to is that I was never told that the voice is made up of musculature. Now, pulling on my experiences as an athlete, once I realized that my voice is made up of musculature, the next question is, well, how do you build up vocal muscle? Exercise. So what I did is I devised a series of exercises that build the voice. And what's interesting is that these exercises conflicted with what you typically do if you study voice. For example, when you study voice, you're typically told to relax your throat, support from the diaphragm, and even sing in your nasal passages. But I realized that's what I was taught. That's what destroyed my voice. The problem with that approach is it does not build up vocal muscle. It does the opposite. It undermines vocal muscle, and that's why my voice got worse over time.
Mm-hmm. When you make the references to nasal passage, I've heard again some of the greatest vocalists describe their technique as singing through their mask. Is this what you're referencing?
Yes, exactly. Yes, this is one of the ironies and one of the paradoxes is that many great singers hold false ideas about how they do what they do. Now, why would that be? How is that possible? That makes no sense.
Gary, I am all about dispelling illusions. So let's let this mythology die and bring out the anatomy book. Let's go.
Well, this is interesting. When most singers, most people that sing as professionals, do so because they're gifted naturally. Mm-hmm. That means they never had to learn what they do.
Yes.
When you're good at something, no matter what it is, you pay a hefty price. And what is that price? Is ignorance. You don't know what you do, how you do it. So if you were to teach, if you were a gifted singer, for example, and because of this gift, you're able to have a career, but then you got to the point where you said, I'm too old now, I'm going to stop singing, I want to start teaching. What do you teach? What techniques do you teach since you got to where you got without knowing how you did it? Right? This is the problem. The problem is that many singers hold ideas that are just ill-based. Even some of the greatest singers will talk about singing for examples, people, even Luciano Pavarotti, others talk about singing from the diaphragm. You've heard this expression over and over again. You should sing from the diaphragm. The irony of that statement is that you cannot sing from the diaphragm even if you try. Why is that? Because when you sing out, when you breathe out, which is when you sing, the diaphragm is disengaged from the process. You cannot use it. Literally, it's not even a part of the process anymore. So how can you sing from it? See what I mean? So
yes.
The reason the underlying cause of the issue is that the voice is invisible. You can't see it. It's invisible. It happens inside the body, out of sight. You can't taste it. You can't touch it. You can't smell it. You can't see it. You sort of have a little bit of a feeling, but not much of a feeling. So it's steeped in mystery to begin with. So it opens Pandora's box of all kinds of possibilities of explanation.
Mm-hmm. That's it touches upon, that's your experience, but it also touches upon my own history, and having also been involved in singing, in writing music, in recording, and I started to recognize and develop an issue with vocal apparatus, and I had never had an issue before. And how I was introduced to you was while I was in Los Angeles recording, guitar phenomenon Robin Ford said, you gotta see Gary. And so that's how I got turned on to your work. And at that time, I saw you pretty steady for a period. And in 2 weeks, the shift in my own voice was radical. And so those exercises that you developed, I testify.
What's interesting too, Tuaca, we're talking about singing, but keep in mind that what I do is equally as effective for the speaking voice. And on top of that, when I first began my career, I became internationally known by building back damaged speaking voices. Don't forget about Larry Carlton, and who had a paralyzed vocal cord, whose voice I brought back, jazz guitar player. I brought back Jack Klugman's voice from throat cancer. Muhammad Ali had Parkinson's disease, and I made his voice stronger. So in the beginning of my career, I became established. Believe it or not, even though I was a quote-unquote singing teacher, I became established initially by bringing back people who had damaged speaking voices. And the reason
Yeah.
why that is because it's the same thing. If you have a problematic voice, what you're having a problem with are the vocal muscles. So it stands to reason if you build them, the problem will at the very least be minimized.
Yeah. So regardless of how the voice is used or kind of what the end game is, the foundation is critical, whether it's singing or speaking. So one doesn't have to excuse themselves or limit themselves for the potential of developing the foundation of the voice, regardless of how they're using it.
To give an example, I've been working with Steven Tyler recently of Aerosmith, and Steven has an amazing voice. I mean, but it was torn apart when I got it because again he was using his voice and his instrument began deteriorating. So by building his voice back, not only did his voice get stronger, but all his high notes came back, and that kind of thing. So again, it's, if you're a student of voice, you're always in the process of building and rebuilding your instrument.
Okay, you answered this already, but just to make a distinction, and you set it up very well in terms of someone doing what they do very well, not sure how they do it, get to a point of teaching, and kind of filling in and coming up with these terms, but it's not really based in a foundation. They're just a great singer. They're gifted naturally. They do their thing, but how to transmit that as a teacher is a whole other paradigm.
If you got Michael Jackson when he was a kid, and you said he had this incredible voice, what do you think he would say if you said, Michael, how do you do it? He said, man, I just I open my mouth, I got all this breath. It's I can feel it coming from me. I feel so relaxed. It just happens, right? You know that the last thing he is relaxed because when the vocal muscles are so strong, it makes you think you're relaxed. So if Michael Jackson began teaching voice at a young age, he'd say, when I sing, I'm totally relaxed. You got to be relaxed too. So when you sing, relax your voice. Yeah, there's the mistake made already, because when a singer who sings well is never relaxed. It's the muscles are so strong and efficient, it creates a sensation of relaxation. Yeah. It's not relaxation. In fact, if you relax your voice, you literally destroy it. It's like swimming in the water and relaxing your body. You go right down.
You're engaged in it. But Michael, since you use him as an example, he would probably say, Gary, I'm an instrument of nature. God bless Michael, an incredible.
Or Stevie Wonder, or any number of people who sing. Another question is this. This is very basic in terms of if you talk about vocal technique.
Yeah.
These young people that sing very, very well, say they're really gifted. What do they have that somebody else at that exact same age does not have? Do they understand a special breathing mechanism that no one else understands? No. All they have is more highly developed vocal muscles. Some people run faster than other people. Some people play tennis better than other people. Some people are stronger by nature than other people because the muscles allow them to be that way. And it's the same principle with singing. Gifted people are highly musical, but they also have a highly developed by nature vocal mechanism.
So if you could just bullet point three myths, kind of take home for people who are writing notes, the three biggest myths about the voice. Okay.
Number one, you're not stuck with the voice you're born with.
Not stuck with the voice you're born with.
Yes, you can build that voice. The voice is an evolving process. It evolves over time based upon how you use it and your experiences. So the voice you speak with right now is the result of many years of being conditioned and trained in psychological characteristics. But because it's constructed of musculature, it can grow and develop in new and remarkable ways. So the first myth is that you're stuck with the voice you're born with. In fact, you can create the voice. You can take your voice that you have at birth and build it throughout a lifetime and develop an amazing voice. The second myth is that the voice is fragile. You get this idea, don't push, you'll hurt yourself, relax, sing from the diaphragm, don't hurt yourself. The vocal musculature is among the body's strongest muscles. Think about it. You talk all day long without losing your voice. How's that possible? What kind of muscles are these muscles that never get tired? I mean, within reason, right? So the vocal muscles are fatigue-resistant endurance muscles.
Fatigue-resistant endurance muscles.
Yes, we're
Okay.
talking about the musculature. Another major myth is that is the biggest myth of all is singing in the mask, because it's such a popular idea that it has to be brought to the surface. The idea that somehow by putting your voice in the when you sing, you have to intentionally put your voice here in the front of your face, the mask they call it, to improve its resonance. And in fact, by doing that, you literally close the throat, you cause the larynx to rise, and cause vocal problems. Those are three myths, and there are many others, but those are three prominent ones.
Okay, so those ideas. So if someone is going to now really making a distinction here, you're a voice builder. You're focusing on building the voice. So you're
all voice teachers should be voice builders. In other words, voice building should not be something that Gary Katona does and someone else is a voice coach, whatever. Voice building is the only way to improve a voice. What does that mean? Think about this. That means that if you study with any voice teacher in the world and your voice improves, it's always because that person either directly or indirectly builds your vocal muscles. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. So what about the student who is going to a voice coach who's talking about some of these very, very myths?
If your teacher talks about breath control, head resonance, mask singing, diaphragm, run away very, very quickly and buy my voice building app. Seriously, if you it's the quickest way to destroy your voice is to practice those techniques.
Yeah.
And in terms of destroying your voice, I'm talking about not only does it undermine the proper functioning of your voice, but the sounds that they produce are unnatural. You've heard as opera singers, the people, it sounds stupid. It doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound beautiful.
So when you're talking about in the point number 3 about a focus on the mask and forward, that there's a compensation that takes place in the body where the larynx rises. So would you say that effectively with exercises, if the larynx is back down, then that would be an anatomical position for proper phonation to develop vocal muscles?
Yes, the down and back lowered larynx is the way you build your voice. You don't sing that way. When you sing, your larynx floats all over the place. But when you work on your voice, it's best to operate from a position of lowered larynx, expanded throat. This way you stabilize the vocal muscles and you maximize. Remember something: if you're building muscle, what are you doing? You're creating resistance. Think about it. So resistance training, overloading the musculature. These concepts horrify voice teachers. The idea of creating tension in the vocal mechanism is only by creating tension in muscles that they grow. So the idea of relaxing your throat is ridiculous.
Okay, so translating that to an athletic analogy, because we are talking about athletics here, that if during the exercises I'm focused on creating tension, it would be like doing bench presses or a deadlift, where I'm really concentrating this weight. And then when I'm singing, then I'm in the ring and I'm free to move for what's appropriate for the fight or the match, or what's appropriate in the song and the melody. Would you say
that's true?
Correlates?
It's exactly. It's a beautiful correlation. Pretty good, Tuaca.
Okay.
No, but the specific muscles that are engaged when you sing, and others that should not be engaged. The problem is if you weaken the vocal musculature, which happens typically with these bad exercises, you force the body to try to help to compensate before you have your shoulder involved and your chest involved, trying to make your voice work. When in reality, if you isolate the muscles in your throat, everything else is released. Then you could sing with your body relaxed, although your vocal mechanism is not.
Yeah. In terms of people who are vocal coaches who have been introduced to the work that you've pioneered, what kind of response have you received from your colleagues? They get excited and say, "Wow, this is incredible! I didn't know this," or do they kind of defend their own position and their ideology around the voice and push you away? How are you received that way?
Well, mostly the former and very little the latter. Most people who undergo this process are honest enough with themselves to say, you know what? I just push my voice for a half hour, and my voice sounds great.
Yeah.
How's this possible? Most people have that kind of integrity. Some people just commit to what they do. Religious, used in an obsessive sense. They might serve some reason, but over time, there's not much you can resist. When you hear your voice getting better, what can you say?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad for that. Even for the basis of keeping an open mind,
not to mention an open throat.
An open throat. An open mind and an open throat and an open heart.
Right. That's a secret of great art, by the way.
That's it.
You just said it.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to share that secret because to experience is another thing.
What's interesting is that the connection between because of your work, which is highly spiritualized. It's interesting to find what you have in singing is something very interesting. You have the union of the physical and the non-physical in a very dramatic and fascinating way. And we're talking all about the physical world, the muscles and tension and all that. But yet what's produced is something that's transcendent. So it's a very intimate connection between the physical and the non-physical. Would you say, what you might say, the body and the soul. It's where you have these physical processes that are giving birth to this transcendent art form that creates so much beauty and wonder in the world. It's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, I know what you mean with that. In terms of my own work, which is multidimensional consciousness and healing, that while I can distinguish soul, spirit, personality, body, it's really, I'm looking at how all of these named things are in relationship with each other and how they inform each other.
That's
so
right.
for me, it's all one. I've always approached life as unity. And growing up, I looked at the different spectrums of what we're presenting as duality, but I saw that as being a unified field.
As you know, my educational background is in philosophy. I have a master's degree in philosophy.
I am aware of this.
Yes.
We've had many conversations.
but the point about that is that in terms of Western philosophy, the body has been systematically degraded throughout the history of philosophy, beginning with people like Plato and these others. They tried to degrade the body and to focus only on what is considered transcendent truths. And you had systematic destruction of the body and the emotions and feeling and sensual experience. What you have now, which is a much more balanced approach, the body has been recognized for its contribution to who we are. After all, we do reside in our bodies.
Yeah.
And that the body is it houses who we are. So, yeah. That this has been a major breakthrough in terms of philosophy. Now we can no longer say that that your feelings don't have any meaning because they're based in the world. No, because now feelings have meaning. The body has meaning. Your body has wisdom. It has truth. It has spirituality. Doesn't exist only out there, but it's in here.
Yeah, simultaneously, and one of my own tenets is to embrace your divinity. You must embrace your humanity. That, again, I can name both things, but they are intrinsically one.
That's right.
And all of that being in communication. And years ago, I've been, as soon as I understood something, a principle, my kind of first, I'll say awakening, for kind of lack of a better word at the moment, was 4 years old. And every time I understood something or had an experience, I began to disseminate it and share it and wanting to understand more about it and challenge it and question it. And so I've always, had this excitement for experience and information and putting that in service. So,
getting back, that ties exactly in with the theme of this show, the voice. The voice is the same way. The voice is also involved in the same struggle. It is who you are. Your voice is who you are.
Yeah, and that communicating that is through the body. And you're talking about the vocal apparatus. That's the body. The message is what's being expressed.
That's right.
So it all comes. All roads lead to. to love.
That's right.
That's another 4-letter word that ends with E.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
So, you know, again, getting back to another, as long you realize, if I, for example, if I do this, E, what you're hearing is my throat creating the sound. This is the center of your singing. That's where it's taking place, guys. Here. So this has to be in shape. This has got to be open. It's got to be flexible enough to create the sound that you want. This is the soul of the voice, which happens to be right next to the heart, by the way.
Speaking your truth. So in terms of these exercises, you had a book that I read, one of the early versions of, before it went to publication. I'm excited for your book, so people can find that Barnes & Noble, your website. Where do they get a hold of it?
Everywhere, yeah. I also have an app that, you know, it's an iPad, iPhone app called Voice Builder. It's been very popular all over the world. And what it is a number of my exercises in an application.
And that's voicebuilderapp.com. People can download that?
Yes, yes.
All right. And then get your book on Kindle. And what I like about your book is that you're talking about some of the history of singing, of castrato, about that tradition. Like you're going into history of
That's right.
opera and some of the ideas, and where some of these ideas about the mask or the traditions of even you know, staging came from. Your own story, you break down anatomy, physiology, application, and so it's I don't have a word for this, but it's tangible.
But, you know, again, it's putting together. It's a puzzle. You know, it's a puzzle that I don't totally understand. I mean, I understand bits and pieces of the puzzle, but a lot of it I don't quite understand. How a lot of these false ideas came into being. Because even the you know, it's hard to imagine that our technique of singing, or what we consider singing on pitch and legato singing and all the principles of great singing derived from men who were castrated in the 18th century. Interesting, not literally castrated, but sort of castrated. Think about this. You've heard the word soprano, right?
Yes.
It's an Italian word. Now, in Italian, if an O is masculine and A is feminine. So, for example, girl is a ragazza, boy is a ragazzo. So in terms of why would soprano end up with an O at the end?
Yeah.
It should be soprana. But why does it end up with an O?
Yeah.
Because the original sopranos were men.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's a good read.
Yeah.
And so if people they get the book, they get the app, they perform the exercises based on the instructions that you give.
Yes.
What could they expect over time?
Well, their voices will grow very, very quickly. You'll notice your voice getting deeper, stronger, more open. Your high notes will get easier. Even your speaking voice will deepen. You'll get a deeper speaking voice. So the overall instrument in all its aspects will grow. Flexibility, range, power, resonance, richness. And you'll notice it very, very quickly. And keep in mind, it's exercise. Whenever you work out, you're creating stress. And with my exercises, it's very common for your voice to tickle, and for you to cough, and for your voice to crack. The reason why that is because you're challenging muscles. And when you challenge muscles, they give in, they collapse, and they grow back. So, in a certain sense, creating beautiful sounds, when you're doing that, is not the goal. The goal is to build the vocal muscles.
Okay, so just saying that again. So if someone's doing their exercises and their voice wavers or cracks or makes funny sounds, it's not that.
Or you feel tickle in your throat and you cough, all that. It doesn't mean you're hurting yourself. See, traditionally, if you were to do that with a quote unquote voice teacher or voice coach, you'd be told, "Oh, you're hurting yourself. Don't push, don't push." It's the opposite with me. I want you to push. Yeah. But on the inside.
So those are those could be considered signs that one is doing it correctly.
Yeah, 99% of the time. If you're following, and plus the fact, even though I'm not there telling you how to exactly to do it, if you approximate doing it right, you're building your voice. So you don't have to worry about doing it exactly correctly every time. As long as you're getting the general idea, and over time you get better and better at it.
Okay, and you began this conversation by saying that you had dreams of becoming a singer. When did you make the shift? I mean, you are where you are now, and so we know you as voice builder to the world, not as recording artist. Right. You know, with a bunch of playbills from your own show. So when did you make that choice for yourself?
When I realized I was frustrated by studying with all these teachers, and I ended up experimenting on my own voice and slowly but surely putting together what I call my voice building system. And I realized at that moment, after working with a number of students, I began teaching as a way to make a living while I was pursuing my career. When I realized the full implication of what I was doing and how profound the system is, I realized that this is too important. It's much more important than my becoming a singer. In fact, my whole passion shifted very dramatically. I could have been a very good singer, but in terms of being a teacher, I'm able to give a special gift to the world, and that's why I made that decision. It was the right thing to do because that's where my real gifts lie, not in performing, but in teaching. I'm honest enough to make that admission.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. Everything you just said, I appreciate where you're coming from and the integrity of that. And
it was hard because for so many, imagine having this passion to sing and now having the chance to do it, but now having to make that decision, do I want to do that? Because I realized not only what I did was a breakthrough in terms of the singing voice, but also the speaking voice, and also people who have vocal problems. Let's talk about it. This is something very radical. So I just made a commitment to myself that this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was the right choice, and I've been successful at it.
And when you said, indeed you have, and when you said that the first myth to dispel is that any voice can change, you mentioned working with Larry Carlton. Many people may not know who that is, but essentially it was a man who was shot in the neck and told he could never speak again. You mentioned Jack, who had cancer of the throat.
Yes.
And also spasmodic issues. You've helped a lot of people with that.
Well, look, I had Whitney Houston. You know, she had, when I got to Whitney Houston, she had her voice was gone. I mean, she was literally was gone. And I built her voice back where she could perform again and did very, very well. Unfortunately, the powers to be got a hold of her and took her away from me, and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I just thought of the person who may say, you know, I don't need a vocal coach, man. I don't want anyone to mess with my sound. I want my own natural sound. I don't need any of that.
I mean, that's a good. I think it's a very good point. It's a very good position. Well, by building your voice, what you're doing is becoming more of who you are. Like, it doesn't alter your singing style. It just gives you more voice. Yeah. So who would not want to have? This is very simple. Do you want to have a stronger voice, with better range, more power, more control, more richness? Do you want that? If you don't want that, don't do it. But if you want that, do it. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard anybody say. I mean, everybody who undergoes the process always admits that, my God, it sounds like me on steroids. That's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. You know, I've been able to experience it directly myself, which is part of why we're here. 9 years later, Mr. Katona. Have we known each other 9 years now?
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
It's amazing, and you're still glowing, Tuaca.
Yeah. I'm doing what I'm here to do, Gary.
Hey, once you find that, there's nothing like it.
That's it, and that brings me to soul priorities. How do you feel your soul is informing your personality, your mind, your body, your purpose, and the work that you're doing on the planet?
Yeah, I think you come to a point. You come to a point. I don't know when that happens. I mean, if you're really on some path of enlightenment, you come to a point when you realize the purpose of your life is not only to meet your biological needs, but to make a contribution somehow to the world. I mean, and that you begin to realize that people are suffering, and that you start feeling a connection to all life. That's the basic wake up call, you might say. Some people have it faster than others. Others have it later, and some people, sadly enough, never have it. Maybe next time around. But for me, it's real. For me, my particular talent and gift is to show people how to open their throats, open their hearts, and use their voices to create beauty in the world. And that's it.
Yeah. Once you said beautiful. Maybe I'm a bit quick. Just once you said, you're not there to look good, but to be done to.
Right.
Do you remember that? In terms of the voice but it wasn't just about the voice.
The voice, look, all of us have individual voices, but in a certain sense, the voice is bigger than all of us. It's beyond us. I mean, we're trying to tune into this thing that we call the voice. The voice is only a small strain of the universal voice, so to speak.
Yeah, it's an interesting word choice. The voice is just a strain. Don't strain your voice.
That's right. That's right.
It's just a part of it. Well, Gary, I love you. And I know we both appreciate time, we both appreciate talent, and we both appreciate humanity and living on purpose. And I'm so glad to visit you. Look forward to seeing you again in person.
I hope so.
And once more, for our viewers and our listeners and our down the line find in the archives, how do people get in touch with your work?
Well, my email is gc@garykatona.com. And that's it. You'll find me there.
All right.
With a nice, brilliant eval.
I'm due. But they're great exercises, great work. Gary, I love you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Mike. I'd love to be with you. Big kiss. Ciao.
Thank you.